What if the driving force behind almost everything humans do is the fear of death? What if our ambitions, conflicts, beliefs, and even our identities are shaped not by logic or reason, but by an unconscious terror of our own mortality? And what if much of human suffering comes from the ways we try to escape that truth? These are the unsettling ideas at the heart of The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, a book that challenges how we understand human behavior, culture, and meaning. Becker begins with a simple but disturbing observation. Human beings are the only animals who know they will die. We are self-aware, symbolic creatures capable of imagining the future, including our own end. This awareness creates an unbearable tension. On one hand, we are biological creatures subject to decay and death. On the other hand, we experience ourselves as special, significant, and meaningful. The conflict between these two realities creates deep anxiety. According to Becker, most of human life is organized around denying this anxiety. We do not consciously think about death all the time, but its presence shapes our behavior beneath the surface. To manage the terror of mortality, humans create systems of meaning that allow them to feel significant, enduring, and heroic. Becker calls these systems immortality projects. An immortality project is any belief, achievement, or identity that allows a person to feel they matter beyond their physical life. Religion promises eternal life. Nations promise legacy. Careers promise recognition. Art promises remembrance. Even parenting can become an immortality project, a way of living on through one's children. These projects help people cope with death anxiety by offering symbolic permanence. Becker argues that culture itself is a collective defense against death. Cultural values tell us what is important, what is admirable, and what makes life meaningful. By living up to these values, individuals feel they are part of something larger than themselves. Culture gives people a role to play and a script to follow. Without it, the fear of death would overwhelm us. However, Becker also warns that immortality projects are fragile. When someone's sense of meaning is threatened, anxiety and aggression emerge. This explains why humans react so strongly when beliefs are challenged. An attack on belief feels like an attack on existence itself. If my worldview is wrong, then my life loses meaning. This fear can lead to defensiveness, hostility, and violence. Becker uses this idea to explain conflict and war. Many large-scale conflicts are not just about resources or power. They are clashes between competing immortality projects. Each group believes its worldview gives life meaning and denies death. When two belief systems collide, compromise feels impossible. To surrender beliefs feels like psychological annihilation. Another central idea in The Denial of Death is the concept of heroism. Becker argues that humans are driven by the desire to be heroic, to feel special and significant in a universe that otherwise treats us as temporary and replaceable. Heroism allows people to believe their lives matter. Even small acts can feel heroic if they align with cultural values. Becker also explores how modern society complicates this drive. Traditional cultures offered clear paths to heroism through religion, community, and shared values. Modern societies offer endless choices, but fewer stable meaning systems. This creates confusion and anxiety. People must now invent their own meaning, often without guidance. The pressure to be self-made heroes can be overwhelming. The book also addresses the role of repression. Becker builds on the work of Freud, arguing that much of our fear of death is repressed. We are not consciously aware of it most of the time, but it influences our decisions, relationships, and self-image. When repression fails, anxiety, depression, or obsession can emerge. Becker challenges the idea that humans are primarily rational. He argues that reason often serves fear. People use intelligence to justify beliefs that protect their sense of meaning. Rationalization becomes a defense mechanism. This is why intelligent people can hold irrational beliefs with great confidence. Reason does not eliminate fear. It often disguises it. Another powerful idea in the book is the paradox of self-esteem. Self-esteem is often presented as purely positive. Becker argues that it is also dangerous. Self-esteem depends on cultural validation. When identity is tied to achievement, status, or approval, it becomes fragile. Threats to self-esteem trigger anxiety and aggression because they expose mortality fear. Becker also discusses the body as a source of anxiety. Humans experience themselves as symbolic beings, but they inhabit physical bodies that age, decay, and die. This creates discomfort and shame. Many cultures attempt to transcend the body through ideals of purity, control, or denial. Yet, the body constantly reminds us of our animal nature and mortality. The book explores how love functions as an immortality project. Romantic love often becomes a way of escaping death anxiety. Partners are idealized as sources of meaning, validation, and transcendence. Becker warns that this places unrealistic pressure on relationships. No human can bear the weight of being another person's source of immortality. When love fails, despair follows. Becker also examines mental illness through the lens of death denial. Extreme anxiety, compulsions, and delusions can be seen as failed attempts to manage mortality, fear. When symbolic defenses collapse, the mind struggles to cope. Mental illness is not simply pathology. It is often an exaggerated form of universal human struggle. Despite its dark subject matter, the denial of death is not nihilistic. Becker does not argue that meaning is impossible. He argues that meaning is fragile and constructed. The challenge is to build meaning systems that acknowledge mortality without becoming destructive. Becker suggests that mature individuals accept their limitations. They recognize that no immortality project can fully eliminate death anxiety. Instead of denying death, they integrate it into life. Awareness of mortality can deepen compassion, humility, and responsibility. It can reduce arrogance and cruelty. The book also highlights the importance of creativity. Art, philosophy, and reflection allow humans to confront mortality symbolically without being overwhelmed. Creativity becomes a way of engaging with death honestly rather than repressing it. Through creation, humans express their struggle and make it meaningful. Becker ultimately argues that much human evil stems from the refusal to accept mortality. When people cling desperately to their immortality projects, they justify cruelty in the name of meaning. True maturity requires acknowledging fear without letting it rule behavior. The big takeaway from the denial of death is both sobering and illuminating. Humans are driven by a deep fear of death, and much of culture exists to manage that fear. Understanding this does not eliminate anxiety, but it gives insight. When we recognize the hidden motivations behind behavior, we gain compassion for ourselves and others. Facing mortality honestly is not about despair. It is about clarity. When we accept that life is finite, we can live more authentically. We can choose values consciously instead of blindly inheriting them. We can act with humility instead of defensiveness. Awareness transforms fear into wisdom. So what role does fear of death play in your own life? Where do you seek meaning, validation, or permanence? And how might accepting impermanence change how you live? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this summary, like this video, subscribe to 10-Minute Books, and tap the bell so you never miss our weekly deep dives into life-changing books. Remember, understanding our fear does not weaken us, it frees us.